This is the PSVR 2, and it is simultaneously the worst VR experience I have ever had, and also the best.
Clickbaity intro by a chimp brand level YouTuber, I know, but let me explain. I'm gonna go over exactly why you should buy this headset, but highlighting a couple of very big initial drawbacks that may put a large majority of the mainstream audience off of this headset for the foreseeable future. But I think that if you go into this headset with an understanding of these issues, especially the bigger potentially house fire inducing issues and how to deal with them before purchasing, you're likely to have a much better time with this headset. Also, I'm gonna assume that you know most of the basics when it comes to the unboxing experience, how the headset fundamentally works, as countless channels now have a PSVR 2 review video out, and I've already done a full impressions video. I just want to talk about the things that fundamentally make and simultaneously break this experience for me. I just need to dump all of my thoughts, both positive and negative, out here in the rawest manner possible. So this will be slightly unstructured, but I just need to fucking talk about this thing. So if you appreciate slightly blunter reviews like this one, a like and sub would be very much appreciated. That said, a good chunk of you are likely to be upset by some of the dislikes I have, so dislike the video. The PSVR 2, as many of you guys are now likely fully aware of, is pretty good, at least compared to its predecessor, the PSVR 1, which released over 6 years ago. But compared to the modern day VR mainstream, primarily comprised of the Quest 2 and the Valve Index, this thing on paper still looks reasonably good, at least with its OLED panel, high resolution, 120Hz display, headset vibration feedback, adaptive triggers, and an IPD slider, a rarity in today's market. If this was a PC VR headset, which many people do want it to be, the reaction would likely be pretty lukewarm, at least to a mainstream audience. But what makes this headset so special is the same reason the PlayStation 4 was so special. A seemingly relatively standard console compared to the Xbox One at the time, that due to constant support from Sony and its first-party exclusive titles, pushed modern-day gaming to the edge. Optimizing, say, for The Last of Us Part 2 for one specific set of hardware led it to look like this on 8-year-old hardware. This looks better than the majority of PC titles on a 3090, because Naughty Dog didn't have to concern themselves with optimizing for thousands of possible PC component configurations. So Sony applied this exact same logic to VR, releasing an impressive but not necessarily groundbreaking headset in terms of hardware, but pouring their effort into optimizing first-party exclusive titles to push it and the PS5 to its very limit. But has this actually worked? Well, yes, but actually no. This is at least where I and many others in the VR community currently, at least in this point of time, are having a pretty horrendous experience in places. A lot of this is just growing pains and hopefully will be fixed. You see, currently for Sony and their first party developers to push out a game that looks like this, there is a lot of visual trickery going on here. For me, this is most clearly seen in Horizon Call of the Mountain. This game is dope as fuck. I love it, although a bit of a climbing simulator at times, but it should be the perfect game to introduce someone to VR for the first time. If it wasn't for the reprojection technique this game and many others on this headset employ. 4 AM editing GetHip here. Apparently, Sony have just pushed out a firmware update that may have or may not have improved some of the visual fidelity issues that I may be complaining about in this video, but no one can seem to conclude if this actually made any difference whatsoever. So everything that I'm about to say may still be valid, and everything I'm about to say maybe f***ing useless now. To get this game to run at the headset's 90 to 120 FPS with this level of graphical quality, the game seems to actually run at about 60 FPS, but with the frames reprojected a bunch of times to get up to that 90 to 120 Hz frame rate. Now, done correctly, this can actually look pretty damn good, and there are sections of Call of the Mountain and other titles like Gran Turismo 7 where this reprojection along with FOV-aided rendering works well enough that you aren't actively noticing it. However, unfortunately, in the vast majority of playtime in these titles for me, the reprojection combined with the incredible brightness of the PSVR 2's HDR display made me more motion sick than I have ever been in my entire life. I have played VR for 4 years now. I've made videos on VR for about 2 to 3 years, and besides my first few weeks with VR, I've never really dealt with much motion sickness before. But the reprojection here is so obnoxiously strong that I literally have had to lie down for an hour or two and deal with a migraine for the rest of the day. Perhaps I am a total pussy. I have dealt with some level of light sensitivity my entire life, but this extreme level of motion sickness does not seem to be remotely uncommon and seems to be clearly experienced by other long-term VR veterans. The more that I have played, the more that I have been able to deal with this. I wouldn't be surprised if I do get over this in time, like you do with traditional VR motion sickness. But the problem with this is really for any new users, even past VR users picking up this headset. This is such an unbelievably aggressive form of motion sickness that every person I had try this headset felt like shit after using it. Not how Sony wants their first time users to experience their product. Most non-VR users I had try the Quest 2 would be okay after 5 to 10 minutes of play, but the PSVR 2, even for short periods of time, just cooks people. It's frustrating because this is almost all a software-based issue. I'm sure with time these games will receive updates allowing them to run better, like most titles do, and rely less on so much reprojection, but at the moment Horizon Call of the Mountain is by far the worst offender. Gran Turismo 7 is less noticeable for me, at least if I'm focusing on driving and not looking for it. The HDR display is also so bright that by default every session with this headset has ended with my eyeballs feeling like they were on fire. It is astounding how bright this fucking headset gets. In some cases it helps immersion, like looking at the fucking sun, but outside of that, everything I think is a bit brighter than it needs to be. You can adjust the headset's brightness in the settings. I believe from Sadly It's Bradley's testing, this can help with some of the visual artifacting too. Now, why I didn't clock any of this when I tested the headset a month or so ago was likely because I played on and off for about 30 minutes, handing the headset off to my camera guy, and was also playing a game that didn't seem to use anywhere near this amount of reprojection. The headset also has a very strong mirror effect. It's essentially, it means like unevenness in the display, I think. This is a good example of what I mean. As you can see in this video from Alt VR, it's like this film grain-like effect. It's painfully obvious in Horizon Call of the Mountain for me. Less so in Gran Turismo, but in some darker scenes in games, it's really, really obnoxious, like Thrillseeker points out here in Resident Evil. Now, this does seem to vary between users' PSVR 2s, which is a little concerning. It means there may be some level of discrepancy on the production line, with some users getting more of this effect than others, or some seeing slightly differing patterns. Now, personally, in most scenarios, I can see past it, but there are certain scenes in games where it's very obnoxious and takes you out of the immersion, immediately reminding you that you're looking at a screen. And paired with the previously mentioned reprojection and brightness, that all adds strain to your eyes and all adds to the motion sickness. What doesn't seem to affect me as much is the foveated renderer. I didn't seem to notice it. I was concerned when I heard Sony was implementing this that it would give me almost like tunnel vision towards whatever I'm directly looking at it, but it seems to be well executed enough and subtle enough in the games that I played that I didn't notice it. Now, moving away from the display, things do get a lot better. Well, also worse. I'll get to that. The head strap is pretty comfortable once you've gotten it in the sweet spot. Speaking of sweet spot, the sweet spot on the lenses is obnoxiously tight, meaning I have to spend at least the first 5 minutes of every play session trying to get my visuals perfect, fiddling with the headset on my head and playing with the IPD slider, but at least this thing has an IPD slider. I do wish the head strap design was more similar to the goated CV1 head strap. I'm baffled that we still seem to be going backwards in terms of head strap design when the CV1's baseball cap design was so goddamn good. The PSVR 2 doesn't feel super secure on my head over long periods of time. It feels more like it's balancing on your head. Other people I had test the headset felt the same way. After an hour of play, you really do start to notice the forehead and lower back head pressure. I did actually quite like the PSVR 2 head strap when I first got to try it, but after playing with it for a few days now and playing for a few hours at a time, it's clear that this Halo head strap design, although initially works well when you're just handing the headset around to other people or playtesting it, ends up just being kind of fucking annoying when you want to play for longer play sessions by yourself. But I think third-party solutions will fix this in time, so I'm not too concerned about this going forward. The controllers are comfortable, the adaptive triggers are fucking awesome. Sony knocked it out of the park with the vibrations with both the controllers and the headset. I thought the headset vibration would be gimmicky, but boy was I wrong. T-boning the fuck out of a car in GT7 feels so much more impactful with the vibration from the headset. The controllers are slightly weirdly weighted in that they feel like they want to cant inwards like this because there's so much more weight here. The finger tracking is pretty good. I mean, it's clear that this thing seems to have some level of pressure sensors in it. Right now in Call of the Mountain, it's too restrictive and it's very clear that Sony don't want you flipping people off, which is like, come on, bruv. What? It feels less so like individual finger tracking and more so like predefined hand positions, but it is more than what we get on the Quest 2 controllers. And speaking of controllers, this son of a bitch charging station. I don't know what it is with VR headsets and charging ports, but Jesus Christ. So a few users have reported that the PSVR 2 charging station, which is an optional add-on, is burning the out of their controllers, and this does seem to be due to leaving them to charge for, in this person's case, most of the weekend, which I don't recommend doing with anything unless you're trying to balance battery cells on something, but I would make sure that you're there to check on it regularly so you don't return to like a burnt down house. One user explained that this could be due to the magnetic system that these use, and the little magnets that it uses to hook onto the charging dock can pick up small metallic particles and can short circuit over time. That said, I have not experienced this yet, mainly because I don't leave anything fucking charging for an entire weekend. The charging dock visually, unless it's been melted, looks pretty sleek and houses the controllers quite nicely. Some have complained that the controllers don't lock in very well. I agree. It's very easy to put the controllers in thinking that they are secure and that they're charging, but they aren't quite making contact with the magnets and they're not charging at all. Once you get used to this and you know to check for the charging light, it's fine, but it's still kind of annoying. The tracking, although I experienced some issues when I first tested the headset in Sweden, seems to work without issue in my studio, except for this one time where it just went absolutely apeshit, and I still don't understand why. The pass-through, although black and white, is so goddamn crisp. It's insane. The depth perception, I mean, it's leaps and bounds ahead of the Quest 2, and I'd argue even the Quest Pro pass-through. The 3D audio is great. It adds so much to immersion, even with the included earbuds, despite the disgusting earwax collection units on the side. Now, this is a tethered headset. Now, after being spoilt for the last couple of years with entirely native headsets, I have to be honest, I am traumatized having to go back to a cabled device like a caveman. Just kidding. I don't care at all. It's a light cable. It's not like the index cable, and it's long enough for my play space, and I honestly don't really notice it all that much. And I think a lot of that is just due to where the cable comes off of the headset. It very clearly leads it down the back of your shoulder. And in terms of gaming, Horizon Call of the Mountain, although very motion sickening with its current reprojection techniques, is very, very good. I mean, Half-Life Alyx, kind of good. Okay, maybe not Half-Life Alyx kind of good, but it's up there. Literally, with all the goddamn climbing, it's up there. Gran Turismo 7 is where it is at, though. If you don't already have a sim set up, get one. Now is the time. Gran Turismo 7 with the 3D audio on a headset that looks this crisp, aside from the reprojection, is fucking crazy. This is the best VR. I've tried Assetto Corsa with like a million different mods. I've tried Project Cars 2. This is so much better. I'm a huge car guy, and I think with the 3D audio, I nearly passed out hearing the turbocharger I added to this R33. I would buy a PS5, a PSVR 2, and an entire sim setup just for this game, because I did. Twice. I bought an entire another set for my brother to play with me. It's so good. I also have no money, but it's so good. By the way, if you want to see my car videos, follow me on Instagram at GetHipYT. I also bought Resident Evil Village, but I'm going to be completely dead ass honest on a stack with you guys. I'm too much of a pussy to play it, so there's no review here. Those are my thoughts on the PlayStation VR 2. And if you don't like them, okay.